I watched SmackDown from Friday evening, April 14th, a date that will live in infamy, just hours ago. And if I didn't have my notes in front of me, the thing that I remember that happened on the show was LA Knight got beat again. But of course, as Gary Hart used to say, repetition is the key when dealing with goofs. If they want to make sure that everybody knows that LA Knight couldn't whip cream with an outboard motor, then they got to do it every week, and that's what they're doing. Otherwise, I will refer to my notes. And Brian, if you could just, I don't know, do you have a loud, jarring sound effect if you hear me nodding off into slumberland, somnambulism even, while I'm talking about this program?
Let me see what I got here.
Oh, gosh. It hurts. It hurts. Don't go into the light. All right, I guess I'm awake for a second now, maybe through the first hour of this thing.
I'm available for soundtracks.
I wish you were available for train tracks. Anyway, we'll let Vince and a coil of rope will take care of you there, fucking Penelope. Anyway, or Pauline as the case, but who was always in peril? Pauline, the perils of Pauline. That's who was always in peril. I had a cousin named Peril one time. She was a homely girl. Nevertheless, I'm trying to do anything I can not to have to talk about SmackDown, but I guess we ought to just get right into it, shouldn't we? So again, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn are the in-ring promo for the first segment, the new tag team champions. It's been a mere 2 weekends now since WrestleMania. And, they actually came out basically and said something that I knew but had never just looked at it in this way before. That was the first time that the tag team championship was the main event at WrestleMania in 40 fucking years or whatever. Boy, Vince, did the Graham brothers scare him or fucking frighten him or insult him or Rocca and Perez?
Well, to be fair,
his dog one time?
To be fair, it's not the first tag team match to main event of WrestleMania, only the first tag team championship match, and many of the years that you're thinking of great tag teams, you had Hogan on top. You're going to have one of the tag teams main event over Hogan?
Well, that's true. There hadn't been any good tag teams in 30 years. All right, I'll accept that. Thank you for reminding me of that.
I think the Headbangers should have been in the main event, not Steve Austin.
I'm not saying that as much as I love Glenn and Ruth and Glenn and Ruth and Chaz Warrington as much as I love Glenn and Chaz. Oh, for fuck's sake. And speaking of love, they love Sammy. They were chanting Sammy, Sammy. I wonder how Owens feels standing there like the fucking guy that holds James Brown's cape. After all these years, they've been on somewhat of a par, and suddenly Sammy took the rocket ship to Mongo and fucking Owens stayed on the ground. I guess he exceeded the weight limit that the pilot would allow on board.
Mongo, not Meadow Luna.
Well, I met Luna.
No, that was on. The movie was on last night.
Oh.
On Svengoolie, which you didn't watch.
Well, I was asleep. More on that next week. Anyway, so regardless of anything, they say that they're going to be the universal undisputed tag team champions in the WWE, regardless of what happens in the draft. But we know that sooner or later, the Usos are coming for a rematch. Apparently, it's sooner because within 3 seconds after Owens, I believe, uttered those words, the Usos music hits. And I wrote, God, can they ever change anything? It's gotten to the point, this is a parody of the parody that they started doing of wrestling, and now they're parodying themselves. A guy or a team or some talent comes out and emotes on their own in the spotlight with their own microphones, like they're giving a dramatic reading, and then suddenly, as soon as they mention somebody's name, their music plays, and they're already standing by to immediately come out with their own microphones And this went a long time and no new ground was covered when the Usos and Solo came out and they went back and forth. And finally they get in a fight. Except in this case, Riddle ran out and jumped Solo to start the big six-way. And it was an exciting little scuffle for a second. And Riddle beat up Solo, who's supposed to be the fucking badass, tough guy. And they had to jerk Solo out by his feet to keep Riddle from pouncing upon him from the heavens. And now with Riddle in this, I'm really thinking that this whole thing is starting to wear out its welcome. What do you think?
You know, maybe I'm alone on this, but throughout this show, here and then during the backstage stuff, I did have the thought that if they don't do something different with Sami soon, I may get sick of Sami. Because it's too much of the pacifist Sami right now for me. And maybe I'm alone on that, and maybe this is just... Because again, the pace after WrestleMania for all of this stuff has been really, really weird. And I felt early in the show, I started thinking about it. You know, I still think they made the wrong decision at WrestleMania. Because if you think of all the possible outcomes and directions things could have gone for the Bloodline, let alone Cody Rhodes, but just the Bloodline, not really feeling all this right now. By the end, there was a little bit of intrigue, but I don't want to get there yet. But, you know, this was the first SmackDown in a while that after the opening promo, I turned it off and did other things. I didn't feel like I needed to stay around to see everything. And when I say see everything, sit through a ton of shit to get like 2 minutes of maybe good stuff at the end.
Right.
They got me to the point where I was doing that. This was the first week where I was a little tired of it. I had to go after the fact and watch it.
Well, I was about to say, but to clarify, you went back and you just weren't interested enough to stick with it on your Friday night. You went back and caught up with it. I understand.
There was nothing holding me to watching it live. There was nothing that felt like I had to see it tonight.
Here's the thing, maybe nobody's brought this up because maybe I haven't even said it in these words until right now, but maybe just because it's right there in front of you. Even if the people out there, if they like the program with Sami and Kevin and the Bloodline or then the Usos and the whole Bloodline thing, if they're liking all this story, the problem is somebody needs to tell creative that if you don't have something fairly interesting for the personalities involved in the program to do on a particular program, they don't have to interact every fucking week with each other. You've still got the packages. You can still show what happened last week or what happened on Raw. You can have Kevin and Sami beat another tag team to get a win and defend the title, or you could have the Usos do the same, try to climb back in contention, or you can have them talking about each other without fucking in-person 10 or 15-minute monologue with each other. They don't always have to interact live for the sake of your story. Maybe they think it means ratings. If that's the case, maybe have a few more interesting people around so you can mix things up a little bit. But when they have them interact and talk endlessly and or fight in singles matches if it's a tag, or a six-man if the two captains are going to have a single, or what, just they're constantly interacting to the point where you're like, by the time they get to the big match, it's not really that unique. Does that make any sense?
It does. And again, we're going to go through an interesting period of time where this is going to test all this out. Coming out of WrestleMania, a lot of fans feel deflated. A lot of other ones don't. They want to see where things are going to go. But between now and SummerSlam, there's a lot of time and a lot of weekly television shows, a lot of hours of TV, a lot of premium live events. So we'll see how they get there. And
also, as I mentioned with Riddle, and more on that later,